This is just a very short presentation to talk a little bit about glandular tissue and its relevance to the topic that we're discussing as a whole here, which is epithelium. It's important to understand what glands are, and it's a term that's used incorrectly in layman's terms. So, for example, you'll often hear people say, when they've got a cold or the flu or something, that their glands are swollen. And what they mean by that is the area underneath their mandibles, underneath their lower jaw, it feels a bit swollen. Those are not glands in the true sense of the word. They're what we call lymph nodes, and we'll come on to them much later in the semester. What glandular tissue actually is any tissue which produces secretions. And we've got lots of glandular tissue throughout our body, and it can range from just one individual cell producing secretions right up to a complex structure of multiple tissues. So a good example of just one cell on its own is a goblet cell, and that's something you should have come across already when you've read about epithelium. And we'll certainly talk about it more when we look at mucous membranes next session. And that's just one cell on its own that produces a liquid type secretion in the form of mucus that is expelled into a cavity. To the other extent, we have something like the thyroid gland, which is what I've got pictured here, which is a very complex structure and plays a big role in the maintaining of the body as a whole. But either way, they both produce secretions, and therefore they are both considered to be glandular tissue. So why are we talking about this now, right at the beginning? Well, epithelial cells produce the secretions. We've looked a little bit already about the 4 different types of tissue types: epithelium, connective tissue, muscle, and nervous tissue. Now, of those 4 tissue types, the only one that has the ability to produce secretions is epithelium. And therefore, epithelial cells must be involved in glandular tissue. And the reason why this is a little bit different to other epithelium is because we've kind of considered epithelium only really as a lining or a covering. So our skin that is made up of the epithelium, and then the lining on the inside of our body as well. So the lining of the mouth, of the digestive tract, things like that. And they're very much either on the outside or the very inside. Whereas glandular tissue is buried deep within other tissues. For example, things like the thyroid, it's deep within your neck. So it's a different place to where you may expect to find epithelium in the sense that we've talked about it already. The epithelial cells within glandular tissue that produce secretions are simple epithelium, and they're generally either cuboidal or columnar. Producing secretions doesn't really fit with the structure of squamous simple epithelium, so we can take that one out. But cuboidal or columnar, and it really depends on what type of gland it is as to whether it is cuboidal or columnar. And you're going to talk about individual glands a lot later on in the course, in the whole of this course in particular. We'll talk later on in biomedical sciences and also in oral biology next semester about different glands, so I don't want to complex things too much with that. Just important to remember that it is epithelial cells that are producing these secretions, and they're generally either cuboidal or columnar. And glands can be categorised in a number of different ways, but the predominant ones that we talk about are exocrine glands or endocrine glands. And there's a very clear and simple distinction between the two. So exocrine glands produce secretions which travel along a duct and then empty out into a space. And in doing so, they get their secretions out and into the rest of the body. So a good example of that is the saliva glands, which is what we've got pictured here. It's a collection of tissue in a number of different places throughout the mouth that produce the mucus or the serous secretions. And then there's a little tube, so a duct, which enters out into the mouth, and you can see them. Underneath the tongue is a good example. Up next to your upper molars as well, you've also got saliva gland ducts there. So it's quite straightforward in how the secretions get to where they need to be. Endocrine glands don't have ducts. Their secretions are released directly into the bloodstream, and then the body relies on the blood moving those secretions around the body to where they need to be. And the secretions that are produced from endocrine glands are called hormones. So the example I've got here is the adrenal glands, and they lie on the top of each of the kidneys. However, the secretions from the adrenal gland can affect the entire body. So therefore, they're going to use the bloodstream to move them around, and they're an endocrine gland. So exocrine glands have ducts, and endocrines are ductless. There are a number of other ways in which we can talk about glands and their functions and structure, but I just want to leave it quite simply just now in you understanding that it's epithelial tissue that's involved in the production of secretions.